Welcome to California in Focus. I'm David Mastio, and today we're discussing the latest ruling about gun control in California. Joining me today is the Center Square's reporter, Kenneth Schrupp. Kenneth, tell me about this case. What's the issue here?
A federal district court struck down California's law limiting gun purchases to one every 30 days, saying it's unconstitutional. Under California law, you can only buy a gun every 30 days, ostensibly to prevent straw buyers from buying large numbers of weapons for others, or potentially for mass shooters to take more time to buy their guns.
What was the standard that the federal judge applied?
As with most gun cases now, the U.S. District Court Judge William Hayes based his ruling on the New York Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruen case. That's a Supreme Court case that created a new standard for Second Amendment decisions that says when the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct, the Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. And secondly, when that standard is met, the government has to justify its regulation by demonstrating said regulation is consistent with a historical tradition of firearm regulation in the U.S.
So the judge is sort of saying you couldn't tell people they can print a newspaper or have something to say in public once a month. So you can't say about the Second Amendment, you can only exercise that, a normal part of the Second Amendment, once a month. Is that right?
Right. I mean, it's just a constitutionally protected behavior, and if the government is going to circumvent that for some reason, it has to provide extremely good reasons and historical precedent to do so.
But even though the judge felt very strongly, he's not imposing this ruling right now. The law is still in effect, right?
No, there's a 30-day stay on the injunction to give the state time to appeal, which means it's not going to take effect quite yet. And next it goes up to the appeals court, the Ninth Circuit. If the state challenges it again, it could go up to the Supreme Court.
You mentioned the judge's name. Is this the same judge who has ruled multiple times, striking down other parts of the state's gun control agenda?
No, this is not Judge Benitez, another U.S. District Court judge who has famously ruled against the state's ban on, quote, assault weapons, standard capacity magazines, and many other gun restrictions.
We had a ruling just recently on billy clubs as well that falls under the Second Amendment, right?
That's true. Under California state law, so-called billy clubs were banned, and a billy club is this very poorly defined definition for any kind of club-like object, whether made of like leather, wood, plastic, metal, you name it. It is illegal to prohibit, manufacture, or carry, and seemingly just doesn't make any sense given that anything technically could be a billy club if it's a blunt object that you are wishing to use as a weapon for self-defense or the like.
So getting back to this ruling about buying guns once a month, one of the things that fascinated me about your story was how Attorney General Rob Bonta, who is generally seen as pretty progressive, actually relied on the laws that other states put in place to restrict the civil rights of Native Americans as a basis for having this law in California. Can you explain that?
Yes. So in providing a Bruen-based defense for the law, Bonta cited what he thought were appropriate historical analogs in the United States, which included restrictions on gun sales to Native Americans as a group to address perceived risks to public safety. Hayes did not seem to like that argument and thought that it was rather dubious to rely on racist, discriminatory laws that are unconstitutional to defend a limit on the Second Amendment.
So the judge also wrote about another justification that was kind of amusing that Attorney General Bonta cited, and that was the storage of gunpowder.
Right. You see Bonta and his staff keep citing gunpowder storage laws that are meant to limit accidental fires as, a reference for how the state can limit on the ownership and storage of gunpowder, and stretches that to be, well, they can thus limit the ownership and storage of guns. Hayes said that the gunpowder storage laws are based on limiting fires and not limiting gun purchases.
Kenneth Schrupp, thanks for joining us today. Listeners can keep up with the story and more at thecentersquare.com.
Knowledge is power, and you deserve to know what happens in your state government. That's why the Center Square's reporting zeroes in on state authorities publishing stories that show where your money goes and who spends it. The Center Square gives power to the taxpayer by tracking politicians' use of the people's money and demanding transparency from state-run agencies. This is how the Center Square equips you, the American taxpayer, to hold your state government accountable. Sign up now for your state's Center Square newsletter at thecentersquare.com.